Hey everyone, and welcome to today's deep dive. We are going to be unpacking some of the most talked about market, political, and even sports news from today's EQAI Morning Briefing.
Mm.
You know, I don't know about you, but it feels like the world is spinning a mile a minute these days, and it can be a little hard to keep up with it all. So we're going to do our best to cut through all that noise and highlight the most important points for you. We've got quite a lot to cover today, including how this upcoming election is really impacting the stock market,
Right.
and why World Series tickets are practically worth their weight in gold this year. And then we're also going to take a peek into some of those cutting-edge developments that are happening in the world of decentralized finance.
Yeah, there's certainly no shortage of things to talk about. It's really interesting to see how, anxieties around things like the election are impacting things that you wouldn't think are related, like how much it costs to go to a baseball game.
Right. It's crazy. Okay, so let's start with this election because it really is a nail-biter. We're less than 2 weeks away from Election Day, and the race between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris is getting more and more intense every single day.
Yeah, and as we get closer to November 5th, the markets are really starting to show signs of stress. Markets really don't like uncertainty, and a change in leadership always has the potential to lead to some pretty big policy shifts. I mean, think back to the 2008 election, the uncertainty around the financial crisis at that time and the potential for some major policy changes under a new administration contributed to one of the worst stock market crashes in history. And with this election being so close, investors are kind of feeling that same uncertainty again.
Yeah. And this election could really impact some major sectors like healthcare, energy technology.
Yeah.
And this briefing points out an interesting historical trend. It says that Republican wins are often seen as a good thing for the markets. But as we were saying earlier, things are anything but predictable right now in our current political climate.
Exactly. And to add to the anxiety, there's growing concern over the bond market. And a lot of that is being fueled by questions about the national debt levels under a potential Trump presidency. Some investors are a little bit nervous about whether or not his policies would be fiscally sustainable over the long term, whether the government would be able to manage its debt effectively. And that can have a big impact on interest rates, borrowing costs, and ultimately the entire economy.
So what you're saying is if the government has to pay more to borrow money, those costs could trickle down to us and affect mortgages and loans, and ultimately every single person's wallet.
Exactly. It all comes back around. And that's why for anyone who has investments this election, it's not just a political event, it's a financial one.
Definitely something to keep in mind over these next couple of weeks. All right, so let's switch gears a little bit to something a little more fun, shall we? Let's talk about baseball.
Yeah.
Everyone's gearing up for the World Series, but ticket prices this year are pretty eye-popping. They're the second highest ever. A Yankees home game could set you back almost $5,000. I'm curious, is it even worth it at that price?
Well, a lot of it comes down to basic economics. High demand plus limited supply equals really high prices. But then on top of that, you've got all the excitement of seeing, a player like Shohei Ohtani play in his first ever World Series. So that's a huge draw for fans, and it's only driving up the demand even more.
I mean, it is amazing to see so much enthusiasm for the sport, but it does make you wonder, at what point does the thrill of that experience get overshadowed by the cost? Because it does feel like the price of pretty much every experience from concerts to travel is just skyrocketing these days.
You've hit on a really important trend there, what some people are calling experience inflation. And it's not just happening in baseball, it's across the board. We're seeing it in entertainment events, all kinds of things. We're seeing this huge surge in people wanting to get out there and enjoy live events after the pandemic. And that increased demand coupled with rising costs for just about everything is really driving those prices up. It's something we'll definitely explore further. But for now, let's shift gears one more time and talk about something a little different. Let's dive into this world of decentralized finance, or what some people call DeFi. It's a bit of a complex topic, so maybe you can help break it down for our listeners.
Yeah, DeFi is basically all about using technology like blockchain to create a more open and accessible financial system. And this briefing today is highlighting a really interesting development in this space.
Yeah, that's right. Synthetix and Kwenta just launched version 3 of their perpetuals on the Arbitrum platform. Now, I know that might sound really complicated, but basically what they've done is they've improved their system for trading something called perpetuals, which are financial contracts that allow you to speculate on the price of something in the future without actually owning it. And they chose to launch this new version on the Arbitrum platform, which is a specific blockchain platform that is known for being very fast and having low transaction fees.
Okay, that makes sense. But help me understand why this is such a big deal. Why should we be paying attention to this particular event?
Well, Synthetix is a major player in the DeFi world. And this move is a really clear sign that they are committed to innovation and staying ahead of the curve in what is a really rapidly evolving space. They're not just sitting back, they're actively innovating and pushing the boundaries of what's possible with finance.
That's really interesting. So what does this mean for the average person, though? Like, should we be paying attention to this? Could it impact our lives?
I definitely think so, yeah. This kind of development could open up a whole new world of opportunities for people in the financial world. Imagine a future where you could get a loan, but with a much lower interest rate. Or you could invest in some new and really exciting projects with more transparency and security than we've ever had before. That's the kind of potential that DeFi has.
Okay, so we've got this election uncertainty that's shaking up the markets. World Series ticket prices are going through the roof, and this DeFi revolution that could totally change how we think about finance. What a time to be alive. Before we move on to part two, let's take a quick breather and just reflect for a second on what we've learned so far. What are your thoughts?
You know what really strikes me is how interconnected everything is. The anxieties around the election aren't just affecting politics. They're impacting how people are investing, how much they're willing to spend on experiences, and even driving innovation in finance. It really is a good reminder that we're all part of a much larger system, and our actions and our choices have ripple effects that go way beyond just us.
Yeah, it is fascinating how connected everything really is. Like we were saying, with all this pre-election anxiety, I bet some people are looking for a way to just kind of escape from it all. And what better distraction than the World Series?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
When times are uncertain, people often look for comfort and excitement in things like entertainment and shared experiences. It's a way to connect with others and forget about your worries for a little while and maybe create some positive memories.
Yeah, I totally get that. But with these crazy World Series ticket prices we were talking about, it seems like even escaping reality comes at a pretty steep cost these days. You mentioned this experience inflation trend a little bit earlier. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's driving that?
Sure, it's really a bunch of different factors all coming together. Like we said, there's that huge surge in demand after the pandemic. People are really craving those in-person experiences that they missed out on. But then on top of that, you've got the rising costs for everything. Venues are increasing security artists and performers are facing higher production costs. And then you've just got general inflation that's affecting travel, food, beverages. It all just adds up.
It's like trying to catch a fly ball in a hurricane.
Yeah.
So many forces at play pushing those prices up.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And it really makes you wonder, how are average fans even affording to attend these big events? Is it becoming a luxury that only a few people can enjoy?
That's a great question. Are there any solutions out there? Is there a way to make these experiences more accessible without breaking the bank?
Well, some people think that technology could be a big part of the solution. Think about virtual reality. Imagine being able to experience a live concert or a sporting event right from your own home, but with like an immersive 3.
Sorry to interrupt the podcast, but here's something you'll want to hear. EquityAI. What if the AI-generated podcast you're listening to right now could be personalized just for you? With EquityAI, it can. Our app lets you customize podcasts based on your watch lists, preferences, and investment goals, delivering real-time market insights and news tailored specifically to what matters most to you. Whether you're tracking your favorite stocks or keeping an eye on new opportunities, EquityAI's personalized AI-generated podcasts will keep you ahead of the game. Ready to experience the future of investing? Check EquityAI out today and make smarter financial moves right from your pocket or computer at www.eqai.app. Now let's get back to your podcast.
360-degree view. It wouldn't be quite the same as being there in person, but it could be a much more affordable way to experience those things.
That's a really cool idea. So technology could both be contributing to the problem and also offering a potential solution.
Exactly. It's a double-edged sword. But then there's also, the power of collective action. If enough people push back against these unreasonable prices, it could force the event organizers and the ticket sellers to change their pricing strategies.
Yeah, there's definitely strength in numbers, for sure. All right, so we've explored all this emotional and economic anxiety around the election and how that might be pushing people to seek solace and escape in these big events, even if they have to pay a premium. But let's bring it back to that third topic that we touched on earlier, the world of decentralized finance, or DeFi. It sounds so complex, maybe even a little bit intimidating. Can you help us understand why this is something that we should all be paying attention to?
Yeah, I get why it might seem intimidating at first, but it's honestly not as complicated as it might sound. At its heart, DeFi is all about putting the power of finance back into the hands of individuals. It's about using technology to create a financial system that's more transparent, more accessible, more fair.
So less reliance on like those big traditional banks and institutions.
Exactly. Imagine a world where you don't need a bank account to access financial services, where you can borrow money directly from other people at much lower interest rates, or invest in new projects without having to go through all these middlemen. That's the promise of DeFi.
Wow, that sounds pretty revolutionary. But like any new technology, I imagine there's some risks involved too, right?
Of course, security is definitely a big concern in the DeFi space. We've seen quite a few high-profile hacks and exploits that have resulted in millions of dollars being lost. So it's really important to be careful and do your research before you invest in any kind of DeFi project.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like any new frontier, there's a huge potential for rewards, but there's also a chance that you might run into some dangers along the way.
Exactly. And then there's also the question of regulation. Governments all over the world are still trying to figure out how to oversee this industry because it's evolving so quickly. Too much regulation could stifle innovation, but too little regulation could leave people vulnerable to scams and fraud. So finding that right balance is going to be really important for the long-term success of DeFi.
It's kind of like watching a whole new economic system being built right before our eyes.
That's a great way to think about it. It's really exciting to think about the potential that DeFi has. It could really democratize finance, empower individuals, create all sorts of new opportunities for people to build wealth. But it's really important to approach it with a healthy dose of caution and a willingness to learn and adapt as this technology continues to change.
Yeah, it really is amazing to think about, how quickly things are changing, especially in the world of finance. We've gone from traditional banks to online banking. And now this whole DeFi movement is emerging. It's like watching a financial revolution happen right in front of us.
It really is remarkable. And like any revolution, I think there are going to be both challenges and opportunities. We've talked about some of the risks of DeFi, like the security concerns and the regulatory uncertainty. But what about the potential benefits? What could this new financial landscape actually look like for everyday people?
Well, you mentioned earlier that DeFi could lead to greater financial inclusion. What does that mean exactly, and how could that benefit people who maybe don't have access to traditional financial systems right now?
That's a really important point. Financial inclusion basically means making sure that everyone has access to affordable and essential financial services, no matter their income or background or where they live. Right now, there are billions of people around the world who are unbanked or underbanked. They don't have things like checking accounts, savings accounts, or access to loans, which can make it really difficult to manage their money, save for the future, or start a business. DeFi could really change all of that.
So how would DeFi actually do that? How would it bridge that gap and provide those services to the people who need them most?
Well, imagine a world where you didn't need a physical bank branch or even a credit history to get access to financial services. With DeFi, all you would need is an internet connection and a smartphone. You could send and receive money instantly and really cheaply, even across borders. You could access loans with much lower interest rates because you're cutting out the middleman. And you could even invest in global markets and participate in things like crowdfunding campaigns. So many more opportunities would open up.
That's incredible. It sounds like it could be a real game changer.
Yeah.
Especially for people who've been kind of left out of the traditional financial system. But let's be realistic for a minute. What are some of the hurdles that need to be overcome for DeFi to really reach its full potential?
You're right. It's not going to be easy. There are definitely some big challenges ahead. For one thing, we have to address those security concerns we were talking about earlier. We need better ways to protect people from hacks and scams. And education is going to be really important too. Most people are still pretty unfamiliar with DeFi, how it works, the risks involved. We need to make sure that people have access to good information and resources so they can make smart decisions.
It's like anything new. There's definitely a learning curve. And it seems like DeFi is changing so quickly that it's hard to even keep up.
Yeah, absolutely. The technology is constantly evolving. New innovations are popping up all the time. It's exciting, but it can also be a little overwhelming for people who are just getting started. That's why it's so important to approach DeFi with an open mind, a willingness to learn, and a healthy dose of skepticism.
So it sounds like we're kind of on the edge of this massive shift in the financial world, with DeFi potentially changing how we think about money, banking, and investment. It's a really fascinating topic, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface today.
We have, and as this technology keeps developing, I think we're going to see even more innovative applications emerge. It could change everything from how we buy and sell things to how we manage our own personal finances. It's going to be really interesting to watch it all unfold.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground today, from election jitters and those World Series ticket prices to the revolutionary potential of DeFi.
What are some of the key takeaways you hope our listeners will walk away with today?
I think the biggest takeaway is that the world is changing really fast, and we need to be adaptable, informed, and engaged if we want to navigate all these changes. Whether it's understanding how politics can affect our investments, or exploring new ways to experience the things we love, or embracing new technologies like DeFi. Staying curious and informed is more important now than ever. I couldn't agree more. So to all our listeners out there, keep asking questions, stay curious, and never stop learning. The world is full of fascinating discoveries just waiting to be made. And we'll be here to help you explore them one deep dive at a time.